Hi there, it's Alistair here. I'm going to talk to you about the Sea Venom restoration, which I've been working on for a good few years now, but it's a long time since we had an update, so maybe we're due a closer look at the thing. Here we have Fuselage pod, which we finished quite a long time ago now, and it's sitting in our new Geoffrey de Havilland hangar, along with quite a large kit of parts now. We have almost the whole aircraft here except for the wings and the outside fuel tanks. So we have the engine, we have the tail cone unit, we have the tail plane behind it, and we have two tail booms here, all of which has been completely refurbished, restored, and it's finished, and it's just waiting here. It's a big Airfix kit, all ready for assembly with no instructions, and that's just great. Looking forward to doing it. But everything here we've done so far. Let's take a look at the tail booms here. We've got obviously two of these. It's a twin boom airplane. They didn't need an awful lot of restoration, to be quite honest. They were in very good condition when we got to them, so they needed a rub down and priming and painting. And the hard part, of course, is putting all the various detail on, the Royal Navy, the roundel, the symbol, and the Kon-Tiki logo at the back, which is quite important because that was the emblem of the squadron that flew this particular aircraft, 891 Squadron, and it's the emblem, if you remember, it was the emblem of Thor Heyerdahl's Kon-Tiki expedition to the South Pacific in the 1940s, the late 1940s. And the reason it turns up on the tail of a Sea Venom is because when this squadron was formed, 891 Naval Air Squadron was formed in the early 50s, the commanding officer wrote to Thor Heyerdahl in Norway, and he said, because your raft was made out of balsa wood and our aeroplanes are partly made out of balsa wood because the fuselage pod is balsa wood, would you mind if we used your Kon-Tiki mast logo as our squadron emblem for the duration of the commission of this squadron? And Thor Heyerdahl wrote back to the commander and he said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So 891 Naval Air Squadron flew from about 1952, 53, right the way up until it disbanded in 1960, and they all flew with the Kon-Tiki mask on the tail of their aircraft, or on the nose of their aircraft in certain cases. So there we are, we had to do it. It was a nightmare to actually paint, but it was great fun. I think the end result is quite well worth it. It was quite a complicated thing to do, but I'm very pleased with it. Still need to put some tail markings on here, with either a B or a C to denote which aircraft carrier the aircraft flew from, either B for HMS Bulwark or C for HMS Centaur. I'm slightly undecided yet as to which one to go for because I want to see some photographic evidence of this particular aircraft, XG730. I want to see particular photographic evidence of this aircraft flying from one or other of those aircrafts. And I haven't found that exact photograph just yet. So under this is a layer of plywood, and then a layer of balsa wood, and then another layer of plywood. It's a sandwich construction, and it's got doped linen fabric over the top of it, just the same as the Mosquito was built during the war. This aeroplane was built in 1957. De Havilland are still making aeroplanes out of plywood and balsa wood in 1957. This is where the aircraft radar would have been, right up in the nose. This nose section is not wood, it's made of fiberglass. This is the radome. The radar would have fitted in here with a great big radar scanner dish. Unfortunately, we don't have that because in its last 5 years of service with the Royal Navy, this particular Sea Venom flew from a second line airfield at Yeovilton in a second line role, and it didn't need the radar, so they took the radar out and they put two big blocks of concrete in just to compensate for the weight in the nose. Now I've still got the two big concrete blocks, but I'd much rather have the radar actually, but sadly we don't. So we're just going to have to make do and just keep an eye on the internet and see what comes up, because you never know, one day somebody's going to have a Sea Venom radar that they want to get rid of, and we'll be in the market for that. But at the moment we've just got an empty space. So we're here in the Amy Johnson hangar now, and this is where the real restoration work is carried out. What we're looking at here is the inner wing sections of the Sea Venom. Being a naval aircraft, of course, it has folding wings. The wings are hinged at the halfway point along the span. We don't have the outer wings here at all at the moment. We're not interested in those. We're not working on those at the moment. There's enough to do with the inner wings and the wingtip tanks, which you'll see in a moment. Inner wings here, these are the largest portion of the wings. The root is over at the far end here, and obviously the undercarriage legs here, the main undercarriage legs, and then there's a pylon for a fuel tank, and that line at the back is where the wings fold and where the outer wings are attached. When we started with this, the wings were still completely painted, and so the first thing we had to do was to take all the old existing paint off, strip it off chemically using a very potent paint stripper, which took a long time to do. Actually, it came off in many layers. It's a filthy job, but it's got to be done if the restoration is to be done properly. So we chemically stripped everything off here, got it right the way back to bare metal, did the odd 1 or 2 repair. There wasn't really too much to do there, not too bad at all. And then you have to apply a real paint system. You start off with an etch primer, which chemically bonds to the aluminium surface of the wing. Then you use a fill primer, which is a thicker primer coat, which fills up all the little gaps and little nooks and crannies and things like that, and little imperfections on the wing. You sand that down. Every time you do it, you sand it down. So you maybe put about 4 or 5 coats of fill primer on, and then sand it down, very fine sandpaper in between each one, wet and dry sandpaper. Use it wet to clean it off afterwards. And when you're happy with that, then you go for the final top coat paint, and that can be anything up to, I don't know, 10 to 15 coats of paint, until you get a nice satisfactorily smooth, glossy, semi-gloss white finish. So this is what we've got here. This is all completed now. Being a naval aircraft from the 1950s, we're painting it white underneath and the colour called extra dark sea grey on the top. So we're not even started on the extra dark sea grey on the top yet. We're just doing the white underneath. In order to paint and strip and paint the wings on the top surface, we're going to have to take the wings off the stand that they're on at the moment and bring them down to the horizontal. That's going to be a big long process. That might happen hopefully later on this year. And when we've done that, then we get to start stripping the paint off the top surface of the wings, just as we did in the bottom surface, exactly the same process. Get it all down to clean bare metal, then etch prime, fill prime, top coat once again. Once we've done that, we're finished on the inner wings, and we can almost start looking at mating them back up to the fuselage pod, and that's where the fun's really going to start. So this is the wing fold area. This is where the inner wings join onto the outer wings, and it's quite a complicated mechanism actually, because it's hydraulically folded to get the wings into the folded position for ease of stowage on the aircraft carrier, of course, when there's very little room. So this is the main folding arm, and this will be actuated from a hydraulic ram that is in the outer wing section. And so this is what actually takes the load. There are 2 hinge points. There's one up there and there's one down there, and there are also locks called banana links because they're shaped like a banana, and these links actually push bolts through these bottom eyes here, so that when the wings are fully spread, these bolts come through the eyes here, and that's what actually locks the wings in the spread position. Clearly that's a very important safety feature. Now these links we're never going to be able to restore, because they have actually been broken deliberately to ensure that the aircraft can't fly again, and that's quite an important thing. What we've done here, we've completely degreased the folding section. It was full of old grease and dirt and so forth, which sticks to the grease over the years, so we've stripped that away, steam cleaned it, and made it all clean. Soap and water basically to get the residual grease off, to get to a nice clean surface. Eventually we will paint them silver, and if you can look over onto the other wing surface, you can see we've actually done a trial silver coat there, just to ensure that we've got the surface clean enough to paint it. And we're happy with that, but we're not going to paint that silver just yet, because it would be far easier to do that once the main upper and lower surfaces have both been painted, because then they're much easier to mask for the spraying than it would be to have to mask that silver paint off later on. So we're going to leave that now. We're happy with the state we've got it to. Job done, going to leave it, move on to something else, and painting the silver coat on the wings will be one of the last things that we do. Very happy with what we've done so far. This has been done by my colleague Pete Stern, who works with me on a Saturday, and he's done a splendid job on this, so thank you very much, Pete, for all your hard work on the wing folds. So one of the features of a Venom, as opposed to a Vampire, and it applies to the twin seat Venoms as well as the single seat Venoms, was the fact they carried big fuel tanks on their wingtips as well. And these tanks weren't drop tanks, they were actually designed to stay with the aircraft all the time. The wings of the aircraft were stressed for combat with these tanks full on both the single seat and twin seat Venoms. So a Sea Venom, being no exception, has a couple of nice big wingtip tanks on it, and these are the 2 wingtip tanks. You think they'd be quite little things if they're going to sit on the wings, but they're not. They're 9 feet long and they're quite large and quite heavy. They carry a lot of fuel. And we've got them on the bench at the moment, so to speak, and I've been working on these to get them again stripped down right to the weight of bare metal, and exactly the same process as we used on the inner wings to use the etch primer and the fill primer and eventually the final white coat paint. Final colour will be white. Some of the aircraft squadrons in the Navy carried all sorts of garish colours on their wingtip tanks. They had red and black stripes, they had red and yellow checkers and things like that. They had purple stripes and purple flashes down them, so forth. Unfortunately, these are plain boring white. I wish it were otherwise, but it's not, but you've got to do it authentically to the aircraft that you're working on. Next thing up on the workbench is one of these. It's a 20mm Hispano cannon. The Sea Venom carried 4 of them under the belly. And we've got the first one out onto the bench now for a bit of restoration, a bit of cleaning up. It's not a working gun. You're not allowed to have a working gun in the museum, so this is a stripped down shell of a gun. It was being flown in the aircraft in its later years purely as ballast, because the aircraft was in a non-operational role when it flew at Yeovilton from 1965 to 1970, and so it was really there to just make up the weight, get the weight right in the aircraft. So it's really just a lump of metal, but we want to put it back into the aircraft itself, and so it's got a bit of work to do on it. It's rather rusty, it's rather dirty, so we need to give it a good old clean up inside and out and make it look as if it means business. And this again is one of the little jobs that my colleague Pete Stern is going to be doing over the next few weeks. He's got 4 of these to do. We've just got the first one out on the bench first of all to see how it goes, and once he knows out what he's doing and how to go about it, then he'll get the other 3 over, and we'll have 4 nice new shiny black guns to put back in the airplane eventually. So this is the tail end. It's the end of the aeroplane, so to speak, and we've done the elevator and the tailplane together. I'm very pleased with the finish we got on these actually. Again, they were very easy to restore, they were very clean, nice to paint, we've got a lovely finish. So all part of the great big Airfix kit that one day we'll go back together and make a new Sea Venom, a newly restored Sea Venom for the Havilland Aircraft Museum.